So I'm going to do this video today, home self-transformation. Website nearly built, but this video I really want to touch upon my own journey and just to really give a really deep, detailed and explanation of what it is to actually heal and what the healing journey looks like and the kind of things that you're going to be up against and the kind of things that you're going to be confronted with. Now I want to start by really understanding the dynamic of what actually creates us to feel alone, creates us to feel like we have to do everything in our lives. And, you know, for me, it was kind of like, this is something I've experienced my whole life. One of the biggest things that I've always experienced is trying to get away from things, like trying to get away from stuff. And like constantly looking for a future point where, you know, I think that my life's going to be fulfilled, or I have the ideas that life's going to be content in a future point. But what I didn't actually realize, or what I've come to realize now, is that most of my life has been about trying to escape how I truly feel. And that escaping how I feel has actually left me very disconnected and very lost in my life. And it was only till, you know, more recently, especially this year, this last year has just been, it literally has been a blessed hell, because what I've had to go into is this whole aspect of myself. So, you know, as human beings, all the time we stay, like for me, focused on the future or focused on trying to get out of a certain particular point or trying to get away from myself. That's kind of how I've been escaping this actual emotion. But this last year, I've actually gone into this emotion, and what I've come to realize as I've gone through this emotion is it represents the deep aloneness that I have felt and suppressed. Now, this aloneness, I would like to put it under one term, and that's grief, because that's what it's felt like. It's felt like pure grief. And this grief is compact in many layers. Hence why they say healing is a process. But actually, as you go through the process, as you go through the layers, you come more deeper into yourself. You come more deeper into that childlike part that felt alone, that felt suppressed. You really begin to come into yourself. You begin to come into your softness, into, you know, all of the qualities that a child has, until they begin to fragment, until they begin to you know, deal and cope with trauma. You know, a child at its core, that's what you're coming back to. As you come through your trauma, you're coming back to that childlike state where you're beginning to touch upon your innocence, you're beginning to touch upon your gentleness, you're beginning to touch upon, you know, all of these much deeper truths that you came into this reality. So, you know, for me, it's been a good 7 months of feeling this emotion and actually taking my consciousness into this emotion. And as I've gone through these layers and recognised the pain, recognised the suppression of that aloneness, of feeling not worthy, of feeling, you know, a lot of shame, of feeling just a whole, to be honest, it kind of feels like this emotional trauma kind of feels like despair, and that's the only way that I can describe it. It's probably the best word to actually describe what I've actually felt. It's like being in a state of despair, and that despair comes from the fact that as children, which I'm going to touch upon at the end of this video, as children we feel so alone in our realities, and that's because as children we're never fully recognized. And this obviously, you know, to be able to recognize, you have to have gone through your own trauma or your own aloneness to be able to recognize the truth of your being. And so as I come in as a child, and this is something that I've grieved and had to go through, is as I've come in as a child, you know, in that state of innocence, in that state of love, and these are the feelings that I've had to, and the layers that I've peeled back, is I remember as a child seeing my mum and seeing how alone she felt. And as a child, like as a child of love, you're a child of love. You come in and then you see your parent, you see your mum or you see your dad, and they are feeling so alone because they've been suppressing the aloneness in them. And then you come in and you can see the aloneness in them, and you can see the pain. And what you can actually see is you can see the lack of love that they've actually had. Like you're seeing in your parents that your parents have never been loved, and that they're in this state of separation, of aloneness. They're in this state of pain, and this is so painful for a child to come into this reality and to be able to witness this and to be able to see the pain in mum and dad. And as a child, you're emulating this love. You're emulating this ability to see their pain, and you're a child, and you're saying like I love you, like and you're trying to love your parents. You're trying to really, really love them because you can see the hurt that they're in. And then what actually happens through this process is, because your mum and your dad haven't recognized their own pain, their own aloneness, their own trauma, they can't recognize the love that you're trying to show them. Because they're denying their own love, they then begin to deny your love. And so as a child, what happens is you begin to see that no matter what you do, you can't heal mum and dad. And this is so painful, because actually, as you realize that you can't heal them through your love, what you actually begin to do is you begin to feel unworthy. Like, I'm not good enough. This is where unworthiness starts. This is where the whole of childhood trauma begins, is when we realize that, or when we believe that we can't heal, that our love is not enough to heal mum, or our love is not enough to heal dad. And then that begins to make us feel like we are not enough. And then that we are not enough begins one of the very first fragmentations, where we separate a piece of us, because it becomes painful. It becomes so painful to us that we can't help mum, or we can't help dad. The pain of that fragments us, so we push that part away from ourselves. And what actually happens over this process is the love that we have, it begins to turn into hate. It begins to turn into resentment. And that resentment begins to turn on ourselves. We begin to hate ourselves. We begin to resent ourselves, and we begin to resent our parents. And then this resentment, it begins to intensify into self-hate and a lack of self-acceptance. And then what actually happens is we begin to deny our own love. We begin to deny that part of us, that child, pure, like, innocent, loving part of us. We begin to deny it. And then as we begin to deny it, we move into this state of separation, because we're separating from the love that we are. And so we move into a state of separation. And as we move into that state of separation, we come into this deep aloneness where we feel alone. We actually begin to mirror mum and dad's traumas, where, mum and dad have mirrored to us the aloneness that we feel. And because we haven't been able to heal them through our love, we separate from our love, and then we create our own trauma. We begin to reflect back mum and dad's aloneness. And then what actually happens from this is a catalogue. It's like a catastrophic event that pushes us into aloneness. And then it's from that state of aloneness that we begin to try to work out all of the other traumas come on top. What's wrong with me? How do I get out of this? We feel that shame in ourselves. We feel not worthy. We feel not good enough. And then this has become so painful that the only way we can deal with this and cope with this is by actually removing ourselves from it. And so, the way in which we remove ourselves from it is we keep ourselves busy. Look at children, they're constantly on the go. Children cannot stop. And the reason why they cannot stop is because they're trying to get away from these painful feelings that they actually feel. And then this actually carries on over into adulthood. And then our adult lives are continuously keeping ourselves busy. We do what children do. It's just that we lose that joy for life. Like, children still hold, they're suppressing the pain of it, but they're not fully become that pain. They're still able to keep themselves in a joy. But, that joy in our adult life begins to mold, and it begins to shape, and the joy begins to it begins to be sucked out of us, because we begin to realize that no matter what we do, no matter what we get, no matter what we achieve, we can't actually escape what we actually feel. And then this leads us into our adult lives, where we're looking for our whole lives are spent looking for things that try to make us feel better. It's trying to, we're trying to fill that void. We're trying to fill that hole within us, and we're trying to do it through relationships, through money, through finances, through absolutely everything. And this is the human condition, and it is the fight against wanting to feel the pain of the emotions. But this is what creates separation between all of us. Like, human beings are all separated in our own personal realities, in our own personal bubbles, where we're kind of self-focused, self-centered, trying to escape how we actually feel. We deny the truths of our reality, and we deny the pain. We deny the pain of ourselves. And because we deny the pain of ourselves, we deny the pain in other people. And then we never have true connection, because the connection to yourself can only come through the pain. Because you have to go through into the pain, you have to go through into the emotions to get back to that very core part of you that turned up and it was like, I fucking love you. Like, I love you so much. Like, you turn up as like, I love you. Just as an absolute pure expression of love. And to get back to that expression, to get back to your core, you have to pass through all of the pain. You have to go through all of the emotional pain. You have to allow yourself to feel the emotions. You have to recognize and allow yourself to feel all of them emotions. And it means time where you have to be in a state of feeling the pain of it. And it's not nice. And there's a reason why human beings haven't done this for thousands of years. There's reasons why there's no enlightened people or pure expressions of love are not the common, because it is a painful process. But now's the time, and it's time to change as human beings, and we've all got to do this work. And this is what me and Lauren do. We're here to support you through the home of self-transformation. I'll talk a little bit more and do some more videos, but that's just a basic understanding of actually what's happening in humanity. When we deny the pain in ourselves, we deny the pain in other people, and we stay in our own little bubbles. Those bubbles are actually the bubbles of aloneness. And it's a deeply painful state that we're all trying to get away from. But I want you to know that with the right knowledge and accessing the right content and accessing the right people and taking them opportunities to follow your calling, to follow your heart, that you can pass through these emotions, you can pass through these layers, and you can get back to that core. Suffering is only temporary. All of the time we deny our own suffering. And when we begin to acknowledge our own suffering, our own pain, and we take the wall away from our eyes and stop denying our actual truths of our reality, then we can begin to heal. And that's what we're here for. Till the next one, much love.